Okay, hello everybody. I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties, but I'm glad that I'm back. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I don't know when you joined this presentation, but again, if you have any questions, please feel free to either ask during the presentation or you can feel free to email me later. I'm going to show my email again at the end. What I'm going to do is, again, discuss not how to choose schools today because that's the next presentation. I'm going to talk about how to apply to U.S. schools and then a little bit about funding. Mostly it's designated for undergraduate students. If you're a graduate student, again, please ask me questions whenever you want, or you can email me later. You can also visit the Education USA website for more information or your advising center in your country. I wanted to discuss a little bit the differences between schools in the US. As I said before, there are different terms. You may not be familiar with them. But in general, you know, there's liberal arts education, there's undergraduate education, there are community colleges or four-year colleges. Now you have to be very specific, you have to be very clear about your intentions and what you want to study because, as I said before, there are over 4,000 schools in the US. You want to make sure that they're accredited first, but beyond that, you want to make sure that they give you what you need, and you have to show that you're fit for school. Some students would want to start their education with community college education, which means it's flexible admissions. It's also shorter. It's a 2-year degree. It allows you to transfer to a 4-year college and end the 2-year there. It's an option for students who may wish to study in a smaller group, smaller classes, and more attention. Perhaps students who are interested in English as a second language or any other things. I myself went to community college because I wanted to change my career. So there are a lot of great opportunities, or you either want to apply first to a 4-year college and then go through the whole admissions process, which I will talk to just ahead. Liberal arts colleges, liberal arts education is a great education system. I know most of you are not familiar. I know for my students in Israel, they're not familiar with this system or with this sort of education. It doesn't allow you to have a degree, to earn a degree in like business or economics like other 4-year colleges. It allows you to kind of experience a lot of other classes so you can decide what you want to do later on. Usually it's a smaller environment and you take a lot of classes, either electives or major classes, but from different areas. You can take some classes in science, some in music, but it kind of trains you to do a lot of things, not necessarily pick a major and then focus on that for the last 2 years. It's an option for a lot of students. You have to consider it. Usually there are smaller colleges, but it could be an option for somebody who's not sure what they want to study, and it's very different than general studies, but it does train you to do a lot of things. And transfer students, as I talked before, may be students who come from other education systems. If you've done a year in your school or less in your home country, you can apply as a transfer student. You usually don't apply in the regular deadline. But rather a later deadline could be between February and April. The only thing is there are less financial aid available to transfer students. But you know, it's only for the second and third year. Once you're in school, you might be able to find different sources of funding. Students who come from community colleges are transfer students, but it's something that you may want to consider. If you're starting education in your country and you want to study in the US and you still want to pursue an undergraduate degree, you can apply as a transfer student. But again, you have to check what the school is looking for and if you can even transfer, because if you've taken a certain amount of credits, then you may not be able to do that. I'm just going to see if there are a few questions. Okay, I will answer those in the just ahead because I wanted to touch some other subjects. So a lot of people ask me what's the difference between college and university, and there's a little bit of misconception. Some people may think, oh, a college might be not as great or not as strong academically as a university, but it's not necessarily true. You know, there are different colleges and universities in the United States. You just have to find the one that is the perfect fit for you. The difference between college and university is very simple. A college may offer undergraduate degrees, And universities may offer or does offer advanced degrees like master level and PhDs. Some colleges are professional. You may see college for engineering, college for medicine that are part of the university. In general, also university is also a research place. So if you're planning on applying to university, if you're applying for undergraduate degree, a master level degree, and you're thinking perhaps on pursuing a PhD later on, I would definitely search for schools that offer that option, just in case you want to continue and pursue something else. Okay. So another thing that I really wanted to discuss before I move on to how to apply to schools, because this is why I'm here, is to talk a little bit about the difference between public and private institutions. Again, people may think that public schools are not as good or not as strong academically as private, but that's not true. The only difference is probably the funding. Public schools are funded by the state. Their cost of tuition may be a little less or more than a little less than private schools, but they offer less funding as opposed to private schools. The funding is does come from private donations or from alumni or other private organizations. They offer more generous financial aid, but the cost of attendance may be higher. It can vary and it can go up to $60,000 a year. I won't be talking about costs during this presentation, but again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. So you're asking yourself, so what do I really have to do if I want to get admitted to a U.S. school? And again, I'm talking about the undergraduate process. What you need to do is, first of all, check the schools that you're interested in. What I'm giving you here is kind of a list of general requirements, but again, your school may not ask for the SAT, you may not ask for the ACT, you may not need to write a personal statement. It really has to do with the school of your choice. So make sure that you choose that. I would suggest probably choosing about 8 to 10 schools to start with. So most schools will ask you for your SAT or SAT2. These are standardized testing. I'm sure your country may have those as well. SAT2 is a subject test. They want to see how well you do in certain subjects, like chemistry, biology. Again, it really depends what school you're applying to. Schools will also ask you for TOEFL and IELTS, meaning they want to see your English language skills. You have to kind of make sure that you made it or at least scored the minimum. Otherwise, it will be hard for the school to kind of decide whether you are sufficient in English enough. But some schools will offer you an English language skills program just before you start the semester, so it's going to help you kind of advance in English and be ready for school. You will need to present your transcripts, meaning from your high school. They may ask for something else. They will have to be certified translations, and most Education USA centers may be able to do that. I know we do that here. We have special translation services, and we can sign it, and it's certified. But again, you have to make sure that you know what your school is asking you for. Most schools are going to ask you for a personal statement. That means some kind of essay. Some schools will ask for certain essays. They will want to hear more about you beyond your grades. What did you do with your life? Or tell us about a different experience that you've had. Really depends on what the school's asking. I will show you again how to kind of organize the school's requirements so you'll make sure that you know that you have everything. Recommendation letters are a big part of the application, usually 2 from teachers and 1 from a counselor, 1 from work or from volunteer experience, but you'll need at least from teachers, at least 2 from teachers, because they want to see how you did in an academic environment, and they want to see kind of how you are in a team, what kind of student were you, how independent, how mature. It's another way for admission to kind of get a sense of how ready you are for higher education. And not every, but most applications will ask for an application fee. Again, only when you're ready to submit your application will you be required to pay an application fee, and it varies. It can be between $30 to $80. Sometimes you can get a waiver, but you just have to be ready to have these things available. Again, I'm talking about the general application requirements. If you're applying for art schools or anything else that's professional, you may need to submit additional information or a portfolio. But because I'm not discussing choosing your school specifically, I will leave it for my colleagues for the next presentation. One of the things that's very helpful for students is the common application. It's one common application that's designed for students who are applying for undergraduate admission. It means that you don't have to go to each website and apply individually. It represents 490 colleges. So if you go to the Common App website, you can see the list of schools that are actually have partnership with the Common Application. It means that you fill one common application. It'll ask you general questions about your family, about your background. You'll have to submit an essay. You have 6 topics, and then you'll have to choose one topic. It's where you can upload your recommendations, your add your testing scores information, and anything else. And each school will also tell you what they need beyond the common application. There's something that's called a supplement. So a supplement is another essay, a few more other questions, whatever it is the school needs. Again, please make sure you know what the school is asking you, because a deadline is a deadline. If the school says all materials should arrive by the deadline, they should arrive by then. If they don't, they will tell you, we can't consider you for this year. I don't want you to be disappointed. So this is what you have to take into consideration. So the common application, again, it opens every year on August 1st, so it's already open, and I suggest you visit it if you haven't done so until now. But it's something very helpful. If your school does not use the common application, you have 2 choices. You can either fill in their individual application, meaning you'll have to open an application in the school's website, through the school's website, or you can ask them if it's okay to submit the common application. Sometimes they will say, okay, no problem. Now, I've had a question about how to find schools that offer certain degrees. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, when you're choosing schools, and again, there are over 4,000 schools in the U.S., I would suggest first, your first focus should be on the degree that you're seeking in the field. Now, if you go to a website called pearsons.com, and you click the field that you're interested to study, say business or management, you will get a list of all the accredited institutions in the U.S. that offer this certain degree. That's actually a good place to start. And then you can have brief information about funding, or what the admission process is, or what the school requirements are. So that is something that will get you started. I do have some questions about specific, I guess, students with specific background. It really depends on the school. I don't think that you can really search school by, either, if I come from a certain nationality, what kind of school is better for me. It really depends on what you're looking for in school. Once you research the school, you'll be able to find more specific information about funding. Sometimes school will offer you funding if you're from a certain country, or if you are applying for a certain degree, but all this information can be found in the school's website. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed with the application, because I would suggest applying to at least 8 or 10 schools, sometimes 12, but it really depends on the amount of work you're willing to do and your commitment, because you have to be committed. But make sure you know what each school wants. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if it's too much work, this is what Education USA is here for. And if you go to the Education USA website, you can visit our Facebook page as well. You'll see, education centers by countries, and you can contact your local advising center. They will help you with your application. This is what we do. We want to help all of our students who are applying to the U.S. They will discuss your candidacy and what you need to do and how to help you with your essays and recommendations. So you can find a lot of resources that can help you. And I suggest not choosing too many schools, because you really don't want to be too much too overwhelmed, sorry. Now, any student can apply for the common application, whether you're an international student or domestic student. You'll have to make sure that you fill out the international student supplement page. You will see it on the common application, but any school that uses the common application and you're applying to that school, whether you are an international student or a domestic student, of course, you can apply through the common application. Now, I wanted to discuss more about what is it that you want, how to make sure that you are applying to the right schools for you. First of all, you really do have to decide why you want to study in the US. I get various answers from my students. For example, someone would say, I want to improve my English, or I want to experience studying with people from all over the world, which is really good, valid reasons, but you really have to be clear about what you want. It will help you to decide on what schools you want to apply to. What kind of degree are you seeking? You have to be purposeful. I know that a lot of students want to apply to certain schools. You may get in, but they may not necessarily be the right schools for you. So you do want to make sure that if you're doing the whole application process, you'll be spending 4 years in the US. You might spend another year to do your OPT. But again, if time permits, I will talk about that a little bit later. But you have to make sure you know your reasons for applying, not just to the schools in the US, but to certain degrees. Why do you want to study business? Why do you want to study arts? What would you like to do with it? It's very important to think about these things. And, the first thing you have to do, beyond what do I want to study, what kind of degree do you want? Where do you want to study? There are 50 states in the US, and a lot of students will come in and say, I would either want to study in New York or California, which are great states, but don't forget, there are 50 states in the United States with over 4,000 great schools. But make sure you know why you are applying. And schools will ask you, why are you applying to this school? Why are you applying to us? What do you think? Why do you think you'll be successful in our school? You have to do your research. You have to write. You cannot submit a generic question or a generic answer because it's pretty obvious. And you have to be honest about how much you can pay. A lot of students do receive some kind of aid. However, about 80% of students pay most of cost of attendance, or at least a part of it. So you have to be ready and be honest with yourself. How much can my family contribute financially? Now you have to, I know some students may want to apply to certain schools, but you have to make sure that you are a good fit for this school, meaning, am I within the SAT range? Can I do the essays? Do I have strong recommendations? You have to make sure that you're kind of falling within at least the minimum or the average requirement that the school asks you for. If you're a competitive student, you may want to apply to a competitive place. If you feel that your application is not as competitive as you'd like to, you can, of course, talk to any advisor in Education USA. They will tell you how to strengthen your application. Or you may want to be more realistic with your choices. Meaning, I will talk about it a little bit later, but you have to make sure that you are realistic with your school choice. And this is another thing. Where are you with the exam results? What is your background? You have to make sure that you highlight your qualities. What am I strong in? What are my strong in qualities? When you write your essay, you don't have to be the most creative person. On the contrary, simplicity might be even more welcome than people who are trying to really impress, and it's very apparent. For somebody who sits in the admissions committee, they know how to recognize essays that were trying too hard. Show the admissions who you are. The essays are a really, really big part of the application. It's probably one of the only places that will have a platform to voice who you are. So make sure you're honest. It has to be well written. It has to be your work. Don't let anybody write the essay for you, because this is your nomination and your application. And again, you want to be honest. think about what other things you can offer beyond your exam results, and essays and recommendations. What did you do after school, beyond school, while at school? Did you volunteer? Did you have a job? These are all very important things for you to state in your application. If any of you have opened your common application, you know what I'm talking about, because a common application will ask you, please state what kind of extracurricular activities were you involved with. Um, it can be anything from I played soccer, I was in the Girl Scout, I worked, and these are very important things. You don't have to list everything you've done. Make sure these are important things to you. I know some people really tend to write, they want to add as much information as they can. It's okay as long as the information has some kind of added value. What does it add to your application? Now, I talked earlier about making sure you know what these schools ask. So I suggest making a chart. This is a very basic chart. Of course, you can add some more columns, but this is a good way to start. You can state the university name. Where is it located? Does it offer the major that I want? Competitiveness, meaning what is the average SAT score? What's the TOEFL? Do they offer financial aid? If you're an international student seeking financial aid and the school says we do not offer any financial aid to international students, they do not offer any. They won't find something just magically after you apply because they'll see how wonderful you are. You'll have to, again, be honest with what kind of payment can you contribute towards your studies. And if you have very limited funding and the school does not offer any funding by itself, it may be a school that you'll have to pass. This is why I suggest making a list of about 8 to 10 schools, so you'll have a lot of options and you can guarantee admittance to at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 schools with some kind of financial aid. But you have to be, again, honest with yourself. Again, as long as you make a very comprehensive list or chart, as you can see here, the more you know about the school, the more you are aware of its requirements. You won't have any issues to have everything ready and, of course, in time. You have to take that into consideration. And I talked a little bit about fit. Again, I don't want to get too much into it because I know my colleagues will be talking about later on. But you'll have to make a list of schools. You can make a long list of schools that you're interested to apply to, and of course focus on that school, see what you're looking for. Some of my students will come in with a list of 20 to 30 schools, and we will discuss it and we'll talk about it. Sometimes I tell my students, let's be realistic. Let's see if this is a school that's really right for you. Are you the right fit? And we discuss that list together. But make sure that you do, again, focus on the fit, meaning, is this a place I want to study? Do I want to study in a place that is a big university? Do I want to live on campus or off campus? I want to play soccer. Do they have a team? I want to volunteer. Do they have any clubs? It's very important. I know some students may want to apply to a school that has a nice small campus, and other students want to live in the city. But if you live in the city, what kind of housing does the school offer? Do I need a car to get to school? All these things you do need to take into consideration because, again, you want to make sure that you are applying the right schools for you. Now, as I said before, you can come into the Education Advising Center with a list of 20, 30 schools. I would suggest doing a lot of research about the schools and then deciding together what kind of schools you want to apply to, making sure that you have the minimum, or if they require a minimum or certain other requirements, you have those under control. And of course, you need to work on your essays and recommendations and make sure everything is ready and on time. But really, the first step is doing a lot of research. It's not something you do over the weekend. I personally work with my students at least a year before they start school because we want to make sure that everything's ready. But if you don't know what to do, again, this is why Education USA is here to help you, and there are advising centers worldwide to help you with the application process. But I think, as I said before, make sure you know why you're applying to, what you hope to achieve. Is it in a certain state? Do they offer the degree that I want? What about funding? And anything else that comes to mind. Some people tell me I don't want to live in a state where it snows, and other people say I want to live by the beach. That's great, great, great criteria. But again, what's beyond that? Does it offer me what I want? If I want to study arts, should I apply to a four-year college? Should I apply to a professional arts college? You have to take these things into consideration, you know, because again, you'll be spending 4 years and you want that experience to matter. Now, again, I will talk very shortly about the financial aid. I know there are a lot of questions about that, but this is what I'm here for. I promise you the last bit of the presentation will discuss financial aid for students. Again, I would suggest on your final school list to make kind of like a 30, 40, 30, I don't know, maybe third of your list should be dream schools, could be very competitive schools, even if you don't feel like you are within the range of what they're asking for. At least 1 or 2 schools should always can be super competitive. Dream schools, I've dreamed about certain schools. That's fine as long as the list is balanced, meaning you'll have at least another 8 or 10 schools that are within your reach, that are competitive, but maybe less. So, I've discussed this before, but again, I really want to remind you about your goal. What is it that you want? What can I offer the school? What kind of research have I done this school? Because most of you will not have the opportunity to actually physically visit campus before you start school, so you do have to talk to admissions. You can ask to speak to international students or international alumni, either in your country or through the school, but make sure you know where you're going. Make sure you know what you want to achieve. And make sure, again, that you're applying for schools that are the right fit. And I know I'm getting a lot of questions about fees as well, and unfortunately I will not have the time to discuss it during my presentation today. But don't forget that Education USA has a booth as well, so you can ask more questions then. And again, any question that I did not answer today, please feel free to email me and I will be happy to answer you. And again, you can visit your Education USA Center. Finances. I know many students have a lot of questions about your finances. Some students who come from certain countries can enjoy governmental funding or other fellowship that is designated for US-bound students. But you have to take into consideration the cost of attendance. Now, when I talk about cost of attendance, I'm talking about the overall cost of the school, meaning tuition and living expenses and other fees. For private schools, you can get up to $60,000 a year. I'm talking a year, meaning 2 semesters. For state schools, it can vary between $18,000 to $20,000 per year. But again, you have to be realistic. How much does the school want? How much can I contribute? You can't come to school and say, oh, I don't have any money, because they do want to see some contribution. International students do receive financial aid, but again, schools that offer 100% financial aid, or at least general financial aid, are usually very competitive, and the admittance rate can be a little strict. So you have to make sure that you qualify, or at least that you are within the requirements of that school, that you are competitive enough, or the application is strong enough to at least grant you a chance to get the financial aid. Now, it's not something that's given to you automatically. You have to, again, when you research your school and you research the finance or financial aid opportunities, you have to see first, does the school offer me any financial aid as an international student? Does it offer students from certain countries? Does it require me to fill out a completely different application? Do I need to write another essay? Some schools will say, we will automatically consider you for financial aid, which is great, but some schools don't. Make sure you know what the deadline is. Just because the university's deadline is January, they may have the financial aid application may be different. So you really want to make sure that you have all that information available. Of course, you need to choose schools that actually offer financial aid, and it comes in different ways. It can be a fellowship, it can be a scholarship, it can be an award, it can be a work study. You have to make sure, of course, that you are aware what the school offers. Now, most schools don't offer full funding. Very, very few schools do that, and they're usually very competitive. So again, just make sure that you're applying to a school and that you are realistic with your choice. I would never expect 100% funding. I would maybe expect something, and sometimes when you apply to schools, I would tell my students, make sure you know that you can pay for everything if you will not receive any financial aid from the school. And some schools, if they feel that they cannot fill your need, meaning what you can pay and against the cost of attendance, they may not admit you. It has nothing to do with your application. They may just feel that they can't offer you the kind of financial assistance, and they might be concerned with how you will pay for your education. So sometimes schools may do that if they feel like they can't kind of compete or complete the need that you have. I wouldn't apply to financially more than I needed. I mean, I'd be very honest, and I suggest being very honest when you fill out all the financial forms, because not just honest for yourself, but we want to make sure the school knows where I am financially, what I can contribute. Don't show more than you have, and don't show less than you have. But again, you have to show some merit. You have to be a good student. You have to have good SAT scores. Your application needs to be very ready. And you have to really work on it, because students, before you show worth, you have to show merit, meaning you really do have to show that you're a good fit and a strong candidate before you show that you need the financial aid. They will take that into consideration. But again, be honest with yourself. How much can I pay? Can my family pay? Can my parents pay per year times 4, because you're going to school for 4 years. And again, perhaps from the second or third year you may have more financial opportunities, but you may not know that until you actually start physically studying in that school. You may have more opportunities, you may not, but you have to be very honest with yourself. I don't want you to go through the whole process and then realize you don't have enough funding. It's really heartbreaking, and it's a long process, and I want to make sure that you not only did a good job on your application, but you're also admitted and you're enjoying your experience. But make sure you know where you're coming from, what kind of schools you're applying to. Realistically, can I do that? Again, search schools. You have to make sure that they do offer you funding. What kind of funding? What I have to do for the funding? Some schools may ask you for a form called the CSS, which is designated for international students. Not only, it will ask you certain questions about your family and about your finances, and then they will decide through the CSS, and you can find it through College Board, by the way, through the website. They will decide what your need is. Okay, so I have a few more minutes left. I have 10 minutes. I'm going to answer some of the questions. And again, if I didn't answer your question, or if you kind of think of something after this presentation, you have a few options. You can either email me, or you can go to the Education USA website. As you can see it here, you can go to Education USA on Facebook. You can go to your advising center. There's about 450 centers worldwide, so you have a lot of options. In some countries have more than a few advising centers, but this is what we're here to do. We're here to give you information. Okay, see. So I've had a question about SAT scores in Ivy League schools. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter where you come from. You still have to make sure that you are at least within the range of the average SAT scores. And if you go to the school's website, every school has these kind of statistics. You can go to a section called either student profile or class profile, and it will show you this year incoming class, their average SAT scores were this. The minimum TOEFL required is that. Although you may come from a country that the spoken language is, or the teaching language is not English, you are still required to maintain a certain average. The writing section is not as important as the critical reading and the math in the SAT, but you have to make sure that you have competitive scores. It really, really matters, especially for competitive schools, because they do need to screen students. They have a lot of students applying. Their acceptance rate may be 5 or 7%. It's not very high for a lot of students. But again, you have to make sure that your application is competitive, and it doesn't matter where you come from. You still need to have certain grades. However, this may be a little encouraging for you to hear. They will compare you for students from your country, meaning it wouldn't be very fair to compare you to somebody who studied in English most of their lives, but they want to see where you are within your country, meaning if other countries if other students, 5 students from Israel will apply to Harvard, they will look, they will look on these 5 students and compare between them and at least see where they are. Each admissions representative in each school that's in charge of a certain region, their job is to know what is the education system in your country, what is considered a competitive grade, what is considered a competitive SAT score. So they know these kind of statistics and information. I want to go through a few more questions. I have a question about the IELTS. Is it recognized in the US? It is. Not all schools accept it. The IELTS, for those of you who don't know, is the English Proficiency Test. It's like the TOEFL, but slightly a little different. You need to register to the IELTS through the British Council. Not a lot of schools accept. Sorry, that's incorrect. Not all schools accept the IELTS. Still, most schools accept the TOEFL. If you're applying at a school, just make sure that it accepts the IELTS. If you're applying to 8 schools and only 2 of them accept the IELTS, I would take the TOEFL. But most schools will suggest or will allow you to make the choice between the IELTS and the TOEFL. So one last question that I may answer, maybe a few more, is about the common application and the supplements. Where can I see them? If you go into the common application after you've registered with a username and a password, you will see on your left side, and I wish I had it with me, but you can go to the website, it's pretty clear. You will see under schools, if you click on the schools tab, you'll see the list of schools that you chose, and if you click on one of those, it will show you the supplements. Now, most schools have not published their supplements yet. You may usually do it throughout September. So you may click on your school now after you've opened the common application. You won't see anything, but I can assure you that they will publish it and will allow you enough time to work on the supplements. Again, supplemental essays can vary. Can be an essay of 100 words. Tell us about your hobbies. Tell us about a book you've read. And again, everything has to be written in the best possible way that you can. Some schools will ask you about what are your hobbies, or they'll ask you to answer very short questions. Doesn't necessarily have to do with other essays. You don't have to write 10 essays per school, but you do have to make sure that you are aware that you have some more work to do. Okay. Again, I do have a lot of questions, and I would suggest either email me later, or you can, of course, go to our virtual booth and ask these questions. Just in short, a visa is granted through the embassy, but it's only after you've received an I-20 from your school, meaning that you've demonstrated the school that you do have the necessary funding. First, you have to be admitted, of course, but then you demonstrate to the school that you have enough funding to pay for your school, and then you receive an I-20, and with that, you go to interview in the embassy and make sure you have all the documents. If you go to the embassy website in your country, the U.S. Embassy, you can see the requirements. What do I have to do? What kind of documents are required of me? If you don't understand something or if there isn't enough information, again, you can contact the Education USA Center in any country. Okay, so I just want to touch with more information. I'm just browsing through the questions. You know, it's a lot of multitasking, kind of thinking about my presentation and then reading the question. But again, students from various socioeconomic backgrounds do apply to U.S. schools. You have to show merit. Some schools offer full funding, some offer partial funding, some offer no funding. If you don't have to be rich or you don't have to come from a certain country or a certain background to be admitted to U.S. schools. What I'm saying is you have to be realistic about your choices and what you can pay. But some people can pay $2,000 or $5,000 a year, and others can pay more. But you do have to demonstrate financial ability, because some schools may be a little, again, concerned about you not being able to fund your school, your studies. I'm just, again, a lot of finance questions, which is understandable. All of the information that I gave you here today can be found on the Education USA website or in the advising centers, and all the finance information is found on the school's website. So again, I strongly encourage you to do your research, go to each school's website, and make sure you know what they can offer, what are the requirements, what is required of you to do, because we want to make sure that you have all the information and you know what to do. Please mind the deadlines, because it really, really matters. It's not flexible. You can't call the school and convince them to accept your application if it's after the deadline. I work with my students very closely, and we do aspire to finish the application at least 2-3 weeks before the deadline, so we can make sure we have everything that we need. Okay, now I'm going to answer one last question before I will be done. And again, I will just show you, again, my email, just so you can, I'm just going to browse a little bit because I want to show you my email so you can ask questions if you need them. This is my email. Again, I'm from the Education USA in Tel Aviv, but you have Education USA centers. They can be virtual centers, by the way, not necessarily physical. But in your country, they're designated to help students, local students. So I know what my students' needs are coming from Israel, and I know what to suggest to them when they're applying to the US. Thank you again for being with me. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'll be waiting for your questions. Thank you and have a great day.